Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Start Your Systems, and welcome to another MX Simulator official track gameplay to wrap up the 2017 National Championship. We are playing Indiana today, and I know that I normally do these videos before the race and talk about my thoughts of the race coming up, but this time I decided to wait until after the race, given that the series is now over, so I can kind of give a wrap-up discussion more so than a preview discussion for this one. And yeah, so I'll start off by talking about this track and sim a little bit, play it, and give my thoughts and opinions and all that good stuff on it, and then break it down into my thoughts and opinions on what happened this weekend at Indiana in real life. But this track is pretty fun. I've only actually played it a couple laps. I'm pretty rusty going into it. I didn't have a ton of time to download it and play it before the race on Thursday, and pretty much my Thursday consisted of getting home, running a lap that I could test the cameras with, and then going into streaming it for the final round of the Race Factor Gaming series. So, like I said, very limited time actually being able to play it, but I did actually get to watch it be raced, so I feel like I know it a little bit better than having not played it at all. And I thought it was a pretty interesting race in sim, and I thought that the track provided some really good options, really good lines, and I'll try to show off those different options and possibilities in this video. But I'm also just gonna ride around, have fun, and try to connect said lines as best as I can. It flows pretty good from what I can tell, but it also doesn't feel, I think, as good as some of the previous Indianas, just my personal thoughts on it. I had raced, I think, the first Indiana that we had in sim, and I didn't race the last two, but I feel like those previous versions, particularly like these sections in the back, I liked a little bit better than what we're working with here, which is kind of a long straightaway, and then it U-turns, another straightaway, and then it U-turns again. And in real life there was like some sand rollers out of this corner, but in this game there's not really much of anything. It's just a little single and then a straight line, and it's kind of just boring. I don't know, I feel like they could have done a little bit better with the space that they had right there than what they ended up doing. Even in real life, like, yeah, they added those sand rollers, but I didn't feel like it's particularly awesome or anything exciting. But the sim track is pretty well built. The rough is evenly distributed the way it should be. Usually, the inside's a little bit rougher than the outsides, but they also have bigger ruts, so if you can get to them, they're better. I saw people complaining on the forums about some of these ruts being a little bit like jagged and kind of sharp-edged, which I can kind of see that, but I can also see both ends of the spectrum there, where it's good to change up the rut shape a little bit. We've kind of been using the same rut shape all year long, and doesn't hurt to change it every once in a while, try something a little bit different. Not sure if that was the exact intention of the Race Factor Gaming track crew, to kind of mess up the... it wasn't messed up, it's just that they're a little bit more, sharp edge. Like I said, they hook you better in some cases, but they're also a little bit rougher because of them being sharp edged. I don't know if it's good, bad, or whatever, but it certainly made for some frustration on the forums from what I saw. And I guess I don't really mind it. I didn't race it, so I can't really say that I was ever mad about it or anything, but it's not the end of the world if the ruts are a little bit different shaped. You have to adapt. Everybody has to race the same track, and everybody did race the same track, as they did in real life, which pretty similar to how this was in real life. Like I said, the only real change with this track to real life was that section right before the finish. There was actually sand rollers instead of it just being a straightaway, but like they actually got this back section down pretty good for what it was in real life. Like, it's pretty close to this, which is kind of surprising because I don't remember this section being in there last year at Indiana, and those guys did a pretty good job, the Race Factor Gaming track crew, of kind of pulling that out of thin air to make sense of what it was going to be on the race day this weekend. So that's unique, and made for, like I said, good racing at the final round in Race Factor Gaming. But in real life, pretty much the talk of the weekend, from about Tuesday, even though I think it was a little bit on Monday where there was some talk about it, onward was the possibility and then the reality of 3-time 250 world champion Jeffrey Hurlings making his AMA motocross debut in the 450 class, since he now rides the 450 class, the MXGP series in Europe. So obviously he's not going to ride a 250 here if he's riding a 450 there. And he had hinted at coming and racing in the States for an AMA National a couple times. He'd actually confirmed he was going to be in for Unadilla back in, I believe, 2014 when he was still in the MX2 championship. And then I think it was the race before Unadilla, in terms of, you know, the GP races, he broke his femur, and obviously that squashed that whole situation. So that's a little bit unfortunate, but obviously there's a lot of hype about him maybe racing Southwick over the years, since he's kind of quote-unquote known as the Sandmaster. But in the end decides, you know, got a week off before the USGP in Florida next week. Let's give it a go at the USA Nationals, final round in Indiana. And man, did he break the motocross internet as it was with that announcement for sure. Vital MX went crazy, as it always does when something like this happens. And then just people blowing up Twitter with the whole announcement and stuff like that, where he was going to finish, and pretty much just the usual case of what's going to happen when you get a GP guy of any sort versus the USA riders, or vice versa, like when Villapoto went over to the GPs and how much hype was around that. And rightfully so. I mean, Hurlings is and was expected to be a fantastic talent, and was finally going to square up like mano a mano against most of the American guys. Yeah, he did it at the USGP last year. And I know everybody likes to bring up the fact that in one of the 4 motos he raced in the USA last year, he got beat by Cooper Webb and Austin Faulkner, but then he destroyed them in every other moto besides that. So everybody was bringing the, oh, he can't even beat Webb and Faulkner. How's he going to beat Tomac and Musquin and all this good, just fun stuff that the American fans like to throw shade at. Coming into the weekend, though, for him, I really had expected him to go, if not 1-1, but be in contention for the win both motos and absolutely be on the podium. Not only for the fact that I think that he is one of the best riders in the world right now, but also because you could tell that American-wise, you know, the series winding down, yes, Musquin and Baggett kind of had to go for it to keep Tomac within reach, since they were still mathematically alive for the championship. But everybody else was kind of just like, you know, get through the last round, put in a good ride, sure, but I'm not trying to go all A1 status on it and break my back trying to keep this Dutch guy behind me. So I knew that he would have a little bit easier of a go of it, but I didn't think that, you know, it was just going to be a walk in the park for him. And I didn't think that most of the US guys were just going to straight lay up. Yes, I thought a few guys were, but just for various reasons, I felt that it was still going to be a good battle, and those guys were going to want to kind of defend their series against this GP guy. And moto number 1 starts, 450 class, and very quickly, Hurling shows why he is one of the best riders in the world. He starts in about 5th. I believe Tomac either almost got the whole shot or was right there with Baggett, and then took the lead pretty quickly. And Hurlings squeaked into 3rd, made a quick pass on, I think it was even Baggett into 2nd on like the 2nd corner, and then by the 3rd corner already had passed Tomac for the lead, and looked like he was just going to try to run away early, and started laying down a blistering pace. Tomac was trying to chase him, and a lap and a half in, right through the section that I went through actually, Tomac, I think, just kind of pushing a little bit harder than he was ready to push in that moto, or I don't know what have you. He just kind of missed time to jump to the left side of the track, landed in some soft muddy stuff, high-sided, went off the bike. Fortunately, didn't crash very hard. I mean, yeah, it was a high side, and you know, he hit the ground decently, but plopped right back up and ran to the bike and got it started quickly. And fortunately, I thought the most fortunate thing about that whole situation for Tomac was he had tripled to the outside of that corner that I was talking about, which either you would double single to the inside or just flat triple to the outside. And I could tell, and you could go back and watch the replay of this if you want, that the flagging on the inside of the track wasn't doing a very good job of directing people. It was just waving a yellow flag. And somehow the 4 guys that ended up going around Tomac had all elected to double single to the inside. I don't know if there was another flagger I couldn't see, or if they were just already going to take that line anyway. But if somebody had decided that they were going to triple to the outside of that corner, Tomac was in the wrong spot for someone to be doing that. He was laying pretty much in the middle of the track, trying to get the bike restarted, and I don't have any doubts in my mind that if someone had jumped out there, he would have been plowed. And fortunately for him, that didn't happen. He got the bike started and ended up going in 6th again. And so then it was down to Hurlings versus Musquin up front, which really didn't look like it was going to be a battle at all, because Hurlings was flying early on and kind of getting away from everybody. And then before long, Musquin started reeling some time back in, caught him, then made a really big mistake, lost some time again, re-caught him, and it seemed like the battle was really going to be on. He looked like he's going to show him a wheel here and there. And then around the 20-ish minute mark, Hurlings, I don't know if it was he found an extra gear or Marvin fell off. I guess lap time-wise, Marvin did fall off a little bit. But Hurlings just kind of cruised away after that and checked out to, I think, a 8 or 9 second victory in his first ever moto at a U.S. National. Kind of showing why he is one of the best riders in the world, and certainly all the American fans that were doubting his abilities and all that stuff had to eat a lot of crow after that first moto, because he certainly made the field look kind of silly with the way he was riding. I mean, Musquin has been on fire these last few weeks, and since Millville he's won every moto but one, and couldn't quite get to and match Hurling's pace the whole moto. So it kind of tells you a lot. I mean, Hurling's technically a rookie at that point and has never raced a one-day format in the U.S. and all these different excuses he could use, and yet he still goes out there and wins the first moto pretty much just outright. Had pressure from Tomac, survived it early. Had pressure from Musquin, survived it. So I thought it was an impressive ride. You know, like, I'm not trying to make it more than it is, but certainly it has to be looked at from more angles than just that he went out there and was the fastest guy. You know, you have to consider that he's never raced that format before. He's always used to the 2-day GP format, lots more track time. So that's pretty strong to come out win the first moto like that. And then you go into the second moto, and then it just gets even crazier. I mean, he does not get a good start in the second moto. Tomac starts even, back there with him this time. Tomac didn't get a good start that second moto. I think it was actually Baggett that hole shot, and Musquin was right there, and they both started kind of sprinting away. Musquin was able to pass Baggett, get away from him just a little bit, and pretty quickly within the first lap, Georgia Lindsay, who's the pit reporter broadcaster, chimes in halfway through the first lap with that she had just seen Hurlings went down and tangled with Frederick Noren, and I didn't see that. They didn't show it on the TV or anything like that. Some people had said that they actually saw him on the ground, so I take it to be true. And Georgia Lindsay puts it as he gets up pretty much second to last, and I think a couple guys hadn't started the race, so technically speaking he was probably in about 37th, not 39th. But he gets up, and by the end of the first lap he's in 22nd, so he'd already made up 15 passes or so within the lap since he crashed until he crossed the finish line the first time by. So that's why the ride probably doesn't look that fantastic, because if you look at it on the lap charts, he's 22nd on the first lap. And then the lap after that, he's in 15th, and then the lap after that, he's in 11th. So we're 3 laps into the race. Hurlings was down in the first or second corner, and he's passing Eli Tomac for 10th on the 4th lap of the race. And it looked pretty unreal. Like, you could tell at that point that Eli was going like full championship mode. He only needed to score a point to win the championship that moto, so he was pretty content with riding around to get a 8th or whatever he could get that moto. So he was just going to let Hurlings go, no question about it. But that's still pretty ridiculous to see how quickly he got to Tomac from getting a worse start than him and then at some point crashing to be behind a bunch of guys. And it was only just the beginning for Hurlings. Like, gets around Tomac, within a half a lap he's around Christian Craig, then he gets around Pike, he gets around Webb, gets around Seeley, gets onto Bogle for fourth, and he's around him within the next couple laps. I mean, he went from at least outside of the top 30 in some regard to fourth before the halfway mark. Then slowly starts reeling in, gosh, he was in second. Well, whoever he caught him pretty quickly and was around him before they even could switch to him to look. And was in a third, had 14 minutes and 2 laps to catch the 2 guys in front of him. And Musquin had stretched his lead out over Baggett by a little bit, so he had 16 to get to Marvin and about 12 to get to Baggett. And sure enough, with about it was like 4 minutes and 2 laps to go, he gets to Baggett, and they're both roughly 8 seconds behind Musquin at this point. Gets around Baggett fairly easily, not a terrible amount of fight put in by Baggett, and then it looked like at that point that was about as high as he was going to get. Musquin had, like I said, an 8-second lead. Hurlings was running 2-3 seconds faster a lap than Musquin at this point, but I mean, 8 seconds and the speed that Musquin has, you would think that he could manage it. Well, the 2-lap board comes out. Musquin looks like he's cruising, got this thing in the bag, and then in the section after the mechanics area, which I'll point it out when I get to it on this track, he like kind of has this weird like OJ moment where he like smashes into the third jump. Instead of doubling in, he tries to like triple in. And he like saves it, looks like he's got it kind of all sorted out, and then suddenly it just kicks really bad. He goes left, kind of slides over the last single on the way out and crashes and gets up really quickly. But by that point, I mean, Hurlings was only, I think, 6 seconds down with 2 laps to go, and Musquin gets up and Hurlings is already by. So I mean, Hurlings definitely kind of lucked into that whole scenario with Musquin going down, but either way, it was ridiculous to watch him go from 37th to 2nd, and then luck into getting, the victory out of that one. I mean, Musquin got up, gave him a little bit of a tough time, but Hurling still was able to win that second moto. So I mean, to go 1-1, to put in the kind of ride that he did in the second moto, yes, Eli wasn't giving his 100% in that second moto, but he was in the first, and I can clearly tell that they were both able to at least run the same pace as each other. And I felt like if Tomac hadn't crashed in the first moto and they were pushing each other like that, that somebody was going to inevitably crash anyway. So this right here is where Musquin went down on that little single. So just to give you an idea where he crashed in case you didn't watch the race yet. But I mean, I was very impressed with Hurling's ride. I mean, I like I said, I predicted he would do well, predicted there was a possibility to go 1-1. When he was down in the second corner, third corner, whatever, of that race, I'm thinking to myself, if he salvages I don't even know, like a 5th out of this, that will be damn impressive. Because that was, I mean, I know the field's quote-unquote depleted right now, but that's still a pretty impressive ride on a track that he'd never ridden, in a series he'd never raced before, in a format that he'd never done before. I would have been pretty impressed with him getting a 5th in that moto. And to come through and pretty much get second, but to win and go 1-1 and get the overall, I mean, it certainly turned a lot of heads, and I was very surprised after the race to see people still defending USA riders and saying, oh, Hurlings, he just lucked into this, and oh, Tomac wasn't giving it his all, and Marvin is way better on that, and I'm just like, I mean, come on, just give the guy some credit. Like, I know that a lot of American fans have this huge ego about them, that their series is way better, and that's fine, everybody's entitled to their opinion, but my whole theory about it is that both the AMA and the GP series are great series. There's a lot of very, very good riders in both series, and to discredit anybody in either series, I think is just ridiculous. I don't understand why there's always got to be this, thwart of hate sent towards GP riders when quite clearly the last 6 years they've been at least on par with the Americans, if not better in some aspects when it comes to motocross. So I just don't like how the hate is thrown around, and that's why when I post to Twitter and stuff, I like to give credit where credit's due with Hurlings, and a lot of people look at me as like some GP lover, and yeah, I love the GPs, but it doesn't mean that I don't like American motocross or love American motocross and love Team USA. Like, comes to Motocross the Nations, I'm full aboard the USA train, you know. I'm not sitting there thinking, oh man, I really hope Belgium just destroys USA this year or something like that. You know, that's not the case at all. I have my opinions about who I think will win this year, and no, I don't believe the Americans will win, although I have hopes. But you know, Hurlings showed why he's one of the best riders in the world and why he's not even leading the MXGP World Championship, and Antonio Cairoli is 100 points ahead of him. And yeah, I know Hurlings had a broken wrist to start the year and had a rough go and all this stuff, but you still have to give Cairoli even more credit than where Hurlings is, because Cairoli's almost into his 30s now, I think, even might be over 30, and still kicking butt, looking for his 9th World Championship this year, and taking it to the youngins like Jeffrey Hurlings and Tim Geiser and all these, you know, Roman Febvre every week. So just thought it was impressive by Hurlings, and just, you know, want to give credit where credit's due. I know people are still going to slam him, and, you know, then next week maybe we'll have the real test with the USGP in Florida, and Tomac can come out there and no pressure, just kind of ride his race, see where he's at. And yes, I know last year Tomac did dominate the USGPs at Charlotte and Glen Helen, but, you know, new year, new day. I mean, maybe Tomac's level isn't either the same as it was last year, or maybe those guys upped it this year, and I think it's going to be a fantastic race in Florida, one that you should definitely check out and watch. But you know, I still think that in some aspect you have to give credit to Hurlings for what he did this weekend, and not what Eli Tomac didn't do or what Marvin Musquin didn't do. I mean, everybody was there to race and to win, and in the end Hurlings won. So I mean, I'm just trying to give both sides of the story. You can agree or disagree with me if you want. I know that some people will disagree, and I know some people will agree, but that's what we're here for. We're doing some bench racing. We're talking about it. We're not just ignoring the fact that there was a fantastic race this weekend, and we all got to sit there and witness some really damn good riding out of several good riders, including Hurlings. Talking about good rides, though, jumping gears for a moment to the 250 class to kind of wrap this thing full circle. Zach Osborne was impressive this weekend, and I tweeted about it that I was very happy to see how well he rode this weekend. He's been kind of full championship mode since, I don't know, maybe round 7 or 8, trying to salvage his championship lead, which at that point was already pretty big, and it just kept getting bigger because he was working on just getting solid finishes and not freaking out and trying to win the race and crashing a bunch. So I was glad to see him kind of come back around this weekend and put in a performance that we all knew Zach Osborne could do, because it just gives me a little bit more reassurance that the Zach Osborne we saw at like Hangtown and now at Indiana this week and stuff like that is the Zach Osborne that's going to show up for Team USA at the Motocross the Nations, which they really need. They need Osborne to like not only win the MX2 class at this Nations to have a chance, but they need him to finish like 2nd or 3rd in both of his motos, with other guys finishing, you know, the other MX2 guys finishing like 11th or 12th, pulling a huge points tally towards the USA. And I firmly believe that he has the potential to do it now. I mean, he looks fantastic. He looks like he's got that bike working exactly how he wants it to. And yeah, he just looked great this weekend, and nobody really had anything for him. I mean, he got 2 good starts, but in the end, he just kind of walked through the guys that started in front of him anyway, and then just pulled away massively from the field in both motos pretty much. So obviously the right choice for Team USA, and obviously deserving of that championship he clinched last weekend at Budds Creek. Not going to talk too much about the 250 class because I felt like other than Osborne dominating, it was pretty straightforward of what happened. Props to Colt Nichols wrapping out the season on the podium. Very rough year with the broken femur at the beginning of the year, and came back and somehow grit through Supercross with a broken leg, and then like re-broke it, but only mildly going in outdoors, so he didn't even get to start on the right foot there. He's had a very up and down year, deserves a podium, so good on him. And lastly, I'm going to just wrap up this video by talking about Tomac actually winning the championship, because I didn't talk about that 450-wise. But yeah, he did end up finishing that second moto in, I think, 6th it was. I think he went 5-6 for 6th overall or something like that. Pretty easily clinched the title. I think he beat Musquin in the points by 13 at the end. So obviously you have to look back at Musquin probably kicking himself over crashing at Southwick or pulling off the track when his front brake broke at Muddy Creek. Obviously the real crux of his season was tearing the meniscus at round 3, but you have to take everything into account. And I mean, if he had finished that moto at Southwick, he'd be champion. It's really the reality of it. I mean, obviously Tomac would have rode different this weekend if the points were closer, but if you take it for face value, Musquin able to just ride home a second and not wad his brains out trying to catch Tomac at Southwick means that he earned enough points to possibly win the championship. So Tomac did everything right this year, I felt like. He was fantastic when he needed to be. He was brilliant to start the season, winning Hangtown. Yeah, he had a couple rough weeks after that, but kind of gathered himself, put in some 1-1 performances in the middle of the season there that really helped his case towards the championship. And then towards the end, really just did his best to kind of coast it home, didn't ride over his head. Looked like a brand new Eli Tomac with the way he handled the championship. And I thought that was a good sign for him, because I felt like he needed a little bit more of that maturing and understanding what it took to win a championship in him. Because in the past, he was just balls to the walls until the end of the season, and sometimes it cost him the opportunity at a championship or what have you. So yeah, I mean, really, really good on Tomac. I did feel like in terms of raw speed, I think he's still better than Musquin most of the time. Yeah, Musquin looked fantastic to close out the season and ended up, I believe, winning more motos and overalls than Tomac in the grand scheme of things. But I think Tomac, if you gave him his bike at the best and his fitness where it needed to be and on a track that he liked, he was pretty much unbeatable, no matter how good Musquin was riding. So in the end, I really do feel like the better guy won the championship. You know, did Musquin ride great? Sure. Did Baggett have a good season? Yeah, absolutely. But I think Tomac was the guy that should have won the championship this year. Talked about it going into the season. People predicting he was going to go 24-0 and all this business, but you know, it doesn't play out that way, but he still rode fantastic and I think deserves that first 450 championship. Now, I do want to address again the kind of Dungey haters from Supercross, because I thought it was really, really funny how many people said, God, I hate how Dungey rides safe and conservative to win a championship. It's so undeserved and da-da-da. And then Tomac does the same thing, and those same people say, like, yeah, good job, Eli, way to ride conservative. Like, that's exactly what you need to do to win championships. And I'm still just kind of baffled by that whole story. I think we finally reached a point where people can kind of respect the way Dungey rode in Supercross. You know, you got to ignore the whole Musquin fiasco in East Rutherford, because in the end it didn't matter in the championship. I've talked about that several times. But, I mean, really, I felt like both Dungey and Tomac deserved to win a championship this year, and they ended up both winning a championship. So, credit where credit's due. You know, they both are fantastic competitors. They both were really on top of their game at different points of the year. Tomac had a tremendous outdoor season and deserved it, and Dungey rode exactly how he knows how to ride to win a Supercross championship, and in my opinion deserved it. So that's 2017 in a nutshell. Did the guy that won the most races win the championship both times? No, but that's how you win championships. I mean, that's every sport. There's a lot of times that guys don't win on but one race and win the world championship. I mean, you look at 1997 125 East Supercross, and Tim Ferry didn't win any races and won the 125 East Supercross championship. So consistency is still a virtue, and for all those people in Supercross that were calling for wins to mean more and the championship to be rewritten, well, that just completely rewrites the history of the sport, in my opinion, and I don't want any of that, because look what it's done to NASCAR. So maybe look around a little bit and decide if that's really what you want changed before you start crapping all over Dungey's championships. But yeah, good on Eli. Fantastic season for him. Very deserving. Good to see that he finally got a 450 championship under his belt. It seemed for a little bit there like it was going to haunt him for a little bit, how close he had been, how fast he had been some seasons. and it just hadn't worked out. But now he's got it. Now he can kind of relax and not feel like the pressure is all on him to try to finally win that first one. He gets to come back next year with the #1 plate and defend it outdoors and go into Supercross with a good head of steam, knowing that pretty much it's just between him, probably Muscan and Roxon to be the guys right now. And you know, who knows where Roxon's going to be. Maybe it looks like he's going to come back and be just strong as ever, but right now Tomac's got to feel pretty confident about where he's sitting going into Supercross, and I don't blame him. You know, he's the guy with the momentum, the guy with the championship, and they should look pretty good going into Supercross. But that is my synopsis of Indiana and 2017. I really hope you guys enjoyed this video and this whole series. I think I'll probably do another one of these when Monster Cup comes around and Does Nations as well. So I'm not completely done for the season yet with these, you know, little chit-chats about the races and what I think is going to happen, but I had fun doing them this year, from the MXers ATV Supercross series with the replica tracks to now doing it in Sim. I thought it was a good, little enjoyable bit to talk about and do some bench racing. And always, of course, would love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions. That's what a comment section is for. You can tell me I'm an idiot or tell me that my thoughts and opinions were actually good in this video. And I don't really mind either way, because that's what the internet and the freedom of the United States is for, to be able to express your opinions and not feel the reciprocations of it. But I hope to have a nice chit chat with you guys about this video. If you guys liked it, please don't hesitate to like it, tell your friends to subscribe if they haven't subscribed, but if you haven't either, there's also a friendly subscriber button that you could hit. And yeah, I'll see you guys in our future videos. Kellen is checking out. Bye-bye for now.